Are you ready to unlock your creativity and transform your passion for beauty into a career? Southeastern College is here to help you take your first steps towards training for a career in cosmetology. Unlock your potential and start your path towards a career making people feel confident. It's time to invest in yourself. Visit sec.edu for more information on our programs and take the first step toward training for a brand new career in cosmetology. Your before and after story starts now at Southeastern College.
You are about to listen to the Dr. Daliah Show. Sassy, stimulating medical talk radio. Any medical advice Dr. Daliah Wax gives on her show should not be substituted for an actual visit to your medical provider. And now, here's Dr. Daliah.
All right, we are back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-Dr. Daliah, 1-877-DOCDALI. So as a kid, I would get cut and scraped and abraded and lacerated, just playing and falling off my big wheel and wrestling with my brother and whatever, running from my sister, tripping over Weebles and Barbies and falling against coffee tables and stepping on Legos. And then I would jump into a kiddie pool or jump into puddles. Or if it was a beach day, I would run into the water. And the term just throw some dirt on it is something we doctors hate. But it's for those of us who are a little older, that was just how we approached our wounds. And we have to stop and realize how vulnerable some of us are, especially with this headline. 4 people have died so far this year in Florida because of a flesh-eating bacteria that might have gotten into some of their open wounds. Each year we talk about Vibrio, and Vibrio is nasty. It kills about 100 people a year in America, and I believe about 80,000 people a year come up with or get afflicted with Vibrio every year. And it is a very, very nasty, deadly, and in some circles we call it flesh-eating bacteria. Now in Florida, they say a total of 11 people have contracted it since 2025. Keep in mind, the numbers across the United States are a lot more. But we're getting our data for this article from Fox News and the Florida Health website. And Vibrio vulnificus is part of the Vibrio genus of bacteria in terms of genus species, not that it's a genius. But I got to tell you, it's a smart sucker to get into our wounds. And it's found in coastal waters. It's also found in undercooked oysters and shellfish. And Vibrio likes warm, brackish seawater. And if you cut yourself, nicked yourself shaving, stubbed your toe, something, and you have a mini cut, this Vibrio knows how to get in there. Now, when you look at the number of infections each year, it's rare compared to others. But the fact that it could kill means we need to be aware of that. Now, some of us are exposed to it and never realize it. If we're healthy, we may only have some mild symptoms, but if you're immunocompromised or if a good amount gets into that wound and it gets into the bloodstream, you could die of sepsis. You could also get a type of skin infection called necrotizing fasciitis. We've spoken about necrotizing fasciitis, where you have the layers of the skin, you have your epidermis, you have your dermis, you have the subcutaneous tissue, and then you have fat, and as you go into the lower layers where your muscle is, the muscle is separated by some of your skin tissues by fascia. The fascia actually covers muscles, and it allows a plain or superhighway landscape for bacteria to just spread if they get that deep, if they get past the dermis, epidermis, all of those other layers. And so a puncture wound could also, unfortunately, be very deadly because it could transverse most of those layers. And if you get a bacteria that is able to use the fascia as a superhighway, you could get something called necrotizing fasciitis. What makes necrotizing fasciitis so deadly is you might not see the infection on the outer layers of the skin. Remember, there was a teenager who was ziplining in Georgia, and she cut her leg. And the ER doctor cleaned her out, or the urgent care doctor cleaned her out, didn't give her antibiotics because they said, it's a clean wound. We cleaned you up. You're good. Well, she came back a few days later saying, but my leg hurts. So the ER doctor looks at the leg. There's no redness, no pus. Said, it's probably sore. You're good. She comes back a third or fourth time, and that doctor's like, I think we need to put you on some antibiotics. It turned out the infection was a necrotizing fasciitis. It was so deep that you wouldn't see the redness or the pus. The only sign was pain. But by then, it was too late. She went into sepsis, and she ended up losing her hands and feet. Because with sepsis, you go into septic shock, where your body has to protect your central organs like your brain and heart. And so it limits blood flow to the extremities. And unfortunately, she lost hands and legs, all because she had a wound that wasn't started on antibiotics. There's a lot of pressure on doctors to not give antibiotics when not needed because of all the antibiotic resistance. And a lot of people are asking for antibiotics for viruses and COVID-type illness and RSV and bronchitis. However, if there's a puncture wound and a deep wound, that I would give the antibiotics. So with Vibrio, some of the symptoms, if you eat it, could be fever, chills, abdominal pain, nausea, vomiting, watery diarrhea. Remember, there was a death in 2022 of somebody who was at a restaurant, I think it was the Rustic Inn Crab House, and ate raw oysters. They had Vibrio, and he ended up getting sick. Another person died, an Air Force veteran, bought and consumed oysters at a seafood market, suffered from vibriosis as well. So undercooked oysters and seafood can carry the Vibrio bacteria. That's one of the reasons why in the Bible, in the Old Testament, they talk about not eating seafood, where seafood is not kosher, shellfish, oysters, because people back then would die of bacteria if it wasn't cooked properly. So we can identify if you have Vibrio because we could culture you, but if you have a cut or open wound, don't go into the ocean. Cover that up. Or make sure you get it checked out right away. And sometimes we don't know we've cut ourselves. But if you know you have an active cut or scrape, you need to rethink about going into the water. Because unfortunately, these bacteria love wounds. 1-877-DOC-DALIAH. Don't go away. Hi guys, Dr. Daliah here. Addictions can sneak up on us and come in many forms, whether it's drugs, alcohol, sex, video games, porn, or something less obvious such as food, internet, or shopping. Addiction can seem innocent at first and then evolve into an insurmountable evil. In our book, Addiction Basics, Caitlin Kalikas and I dive into the common addictions and provide tips for identifying and preventing these before they sneak in and take over our lives. Addiction Basics can be found on Amazon or my website, drdaliah.com. Check it out.
Carl Amari here to tell you about our newest website for old-time radio lovers. It's 100radioshows.com. At this site, there are 5 old-time radio shows waiting for you to download free as our gift to you, and be sure to browse the additional 700 old-time radio shows available to you for 70% off by using the promo code RADIO at checkout. This is a limited-time offer, so log on to 100radioshows.com. That's 100radioshows.com.
Hi, it's Mark Falter, host of the Financial Fitness Show. I strongly believe that no one should ever pay 1 penny more in taxes than they are legally obligated. Unfortunately, for most hardworking Americans, this just isn't the case. Why? Because most people spend more time planning next weekend's getaway than trying to ensure they're going to pay less in taxes. My financial fitness team has put together some materials that I know are going to help you. It's the Tax Savings Kit. Tax Savings Kit includes 3 things: free tax analysis, top 10 ways to pay less in taxes, and an investor's guide to taxes. Now, how do you get it? Simple. 866-764-2635. Again, 866-764-2635. I'm Mark Falter. This is Financial Fitness, making personal finance profitable.
We are back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-DOC-DALI, 1-877-DOC-DALI. Big thanks to Talk Media Network for making the show happen. Big thanks to Daniel, our producer. And big thanks to you all for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. Don't forget to follow us on X or Twitter at Dr. Daliah, Facebook, The Dr. Daliah Show, and on YouTube. Click like and subscribe. So does removing medical debt from credit reports help lower income families or hurt them? Now, the media and the average person who dislikes Trump will say, oh, it helps. You've got to remove that from credit reports. Remove the medical debt. That is going to be a cornerstone of helping all Americans, especially those who struggle financially. On the outset, it could. But I'm seeing the opposite. I'm seeing the exact opposite. People are being asked or shooken down to pay up front. Now that medical debt might not count on your credit report. And so whereas somebody wealthy may have $100 or $200 in their pocket to walk into the urgent care door, what about those who rely on bill me later? And so I'm starting to see the opposite. Now, in the news the other day, a federal judge in Texas removed a Biden-era finalized rule by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau that would have removed medical debt from credit reports. AP News is reporting that U.S. District Court Judge Sean Jordan of Texas's Eastern District, who was appointed by President Donald Trump, found on Friday that the rule exceeded the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau's authority. Judge Jordan said the CFPB is not permitted to remove medical debt from credit reports, according to the Fair Credit Reporting Act. So the removing medical debt was expected to increase the credit scores of millions of families by an average of 20 points. That's why the Bureau wanted to do that, because they found that outstanding healthcare claims were a, quote, poor predictor of an individual's ability to repay a loan. I disagree with that. And I'll tell you why in a second. I'll disagree with that. But the 3 national credit reporting agencies, Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion, announced last year that they would remove medical collections under $500 from U.S. consumer credit reports. The rule was projected to ban all outstanding medical bills from appearing on credit reports and prohibit lenders from using that information. Now, the rule would have removed about $50 billion in medical debt from the credit reports of 15 million Americans. According to the agency, 1 in 5 Americans has at least one medical debt collection amount on their credit reports. And over half of the collection entries on credit reports are for medical debts. They say the problem disproportionately affects people of color. That I agree with. And they say that 28% of black people and 22% of Latino people in the U.S. carry medical debt versus 17% of white people. But with that being said, now what do you think is happening to those populations when they tell the front desk, bill me later? I'm not going to pay the copay or the upfront costs. They're getting turned down, which is why we really need to think this through. The CFPB was established by Congress after the 2008 financial crisis to monitor credit card companies, mortgage providers, debt collectors, and other settlements of the consumer finance industry. Now, Trump has issues with this agency, and I really think that we have to make educated decisions, especially when they are saying that somebody not having outstanding claims on health care is a poor predictor of an individual's ability to repay a loan. I disagree with that. And the reason why is prior to companies running things, although still medical companies, might still do this. But if we had a patient who said, look, this is what I'm going through. Can I pay $5 a week or $25 a month towards my bill? The average doctor would say, absolutely, we won't send you to collections. Set up a payment plan, and it showed you're trying. One of the easiest ways to avoid something going on a collection report is the negotiation people have with their medical provider. Talking to the doctor, talking to the financial person behind the desk. And yet you can't do that with your power company. You can't do that with your home mortgage, with your car loan. Which means if I was a creditor or a lender and I saw that somebody had, shall we say, medical debt, the first question I would ask is, because in the medical community, they always make a deal. Doctors will always, remember I told you I had a family member who fanned out all his bills on the kitchen table for me. And he had them in order of what he would pay. And you saw the power bill, you saw the rent, and at the very, very end was the doctor bill. And I said, just not judgingly, I go, okay, now why is the doctor bill last? He goes, because they'll always work a deal. Or they'll always write part off. Which means if I saw that debt made it to a credit report, I would be kind of questioning, did you make an attempt? And if you did make an attempt and a $5 or $25 wasn't enough, I would wonder if you could then pay my bills. And so I think it is a predictor. Now, I'm not saying somebody that has a lot of medical bills can't work. That might be a different predictor. But in medicine, there's a lot of negotiating power. Now that most of the doctors work for companies, it's a little different, especially if that company's billing office is in a completely another state. But if $50 billion was now not counted, where it's like, you know what? Doesn't matter if you don't pay. If it's not on your credit report, you don't have to pay. What do you think is happening with that lack of $50 billion going to the healthcare system? Fewer nurses, fewer days open. Maybe the air conditioning is not going to be so low. Maybe the rent won't get paid. Now, I know, and I'm not playing a violin for these medical corporations that are making billions. But the average person with medical debt up until now was hurting the small business family doc, small business pediatrician. And what did I do with my office when people wouldn't pay their bills? I closed it. It didn't make any sense. I could have probably lasted another year. But if people weren't paying bills because they had high Obamacare deductibles, I could only take out so many loans to pay my staff. I closed it. And I still have patients calling saying, I haven't found a doctor since you closed 9 years ago. When will you open up and see patients again? And I can't say when people will pay their bills. I can't say that because it's still not enough. It's too expensive to manage an office. I would have to work for a corporation, and I do work for a corporation. Now, doing telemedicine, I'm really grateful for them. But if people don't pay their bills, then eventually we don't have jobs there. So the big thing that I'm seeing is when I tell a patient online, you really need to see a doctor in person. 99% of them say they won't see me unless I pay up front. And which demographics do you think that's going to affect the most? Those with lower income. Whites, Latinos, blacks, Asian, whoever is in the lower income bracket that now has to empty their pockets to be seen. And can you blame the medical office? This "I'll pay you later" or "bill me" won't work if there is no ramifications for not paying your bills. Imagine walking into your supermarket saying, you know what, with that milk, I'll pay you later. Security will go, sorry, put the milk back. And that's where we're at. 1-877 Doc Daliah, don't go away.
Looking for a gift that can actually help secure someone's future? It's Mark Falter's new book, Common Sense Income Strategies. It makes the perfect gift for that special someone in your life. Mark has helped thousands of hardworking Americans secure their financial future by using time-tested strategies that continue to create wealth, whether the market is up or down. Strategies that will make perfect sense once you take the time to read this powerful book. Common Sense Income Strategies brings to you what Mark has been teaching in person and talking about on the radio for decades. You've worked too long and too hard not to see the fruits of your labor. To learn how to receive your free copy, call 866-764-2635. That's 866-764-2635. Secure your future with Common Sense Income Strategies by Mark Falter. Again, to learn how to receive your free copy, call 866-764-2635. That's 866-764-2635.
All right. We are back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877 Doc Daliah, 1-877 DOCDALI. Is it me, or have there been a lot of car recalls lately? I don't usually pay attention to recalls because my car is a 2016 and it's a used Corvette. Oh yeah, I always say used. I don't buy new anymore because I can't afford it, and because it drops drastically the value when you drive it off the lot. But it's a Corvette. It's been in good shape. I've had very few problems, knock on wood. But I look at all these recalls. Like BMW recalled more than 70,000 vehicles. I believe they're electric vehicles because of loss of power while driving. They said the electric drive motor software may shut down the high voltage system, causing a loss of drive power. Well, that's frightening. And if you get into a crash with an electric vehicle, I believe the fire risk is more devastating, but you could get into a fiery crash with any car, fuel injected or not. But I've just seen time and time again, these cars hit trees and then boom, ignite. And you don't have time to get out of that car. But my husband had something similar with his car, which was non-electric. His truck would just power down on the freeway. And it was a Chevy. And after the second time it happened, he told me. See, my husband won't tell me the first time. So this is the second time? I'm like, get rid of the truck now. So we sold it and traded in for another truck. Used. All we buy is used. But maybe that's the problem. Maybe we need to buy something non-used so it doesn't die. But I'm lucky with my car. Ford is apparently recalling 700,000 vehicles due to a fuel leak issue. They say this fuel leak issue could lead to fires. The recall is including the 2021 to 2024 Ford Bronco Sports and the 2020 to 2022 Ford Escape. They said a fuel injector may crack and leak fuel inside the engine compartment. Well, that's dangerous. Liquid fuel or fuel vapor that accumulates near a hot surface may ignite, leading to an underhood fire and then increasing the risk of injury. This is according to USA Today. Ford said in its NHTSA filing dated July 11th that that is what they found. Fuel leak could lead to fuel odor both inside and outside the vehicle. Now, as an aside, I was with a friend of mine yesterday, and she was telling me how she came home one night and she smelled gas in the house, outside the house. And she told her boyfriend, she goes, we must have a gas leak. So she called the fire department. She called the gas company. They came out. They checked the meters. Meters were fine. Nothing was pinging any radar on gas. And they're like, we smell it, but we can't see what's wrong with your gas line. So they told them to flush out the pipes. You know, whenever you kind of smell a little sewery or gas or something, you run the pipes a little bit just in case there's some backup or something. And so they did all that. And the next morning, she could still smell it. Well, her boyfriend tried to drive to work, and his electric vehicle wouldn't work. So they took it into the shop, or they had it towed. AAA towed it to a shop. Usually now, I live in Southern Nevada, so it could take 4 or 5 days to get in anywhere. Remember, you used to be able to just pull up. But they found a mechanic, or they found a dealership that would take them same day. And when they looked at the battery, they used the term oozing, where there was material oozing out of the electric vehicle battery. If that car would have turned on, there could have been that thermal runaway heat exchange, then fire, and he could have died. Thank God the car didn't run and he didn't drive the vehicle. Now, I don't know what type of car. I think it might have been a Hyundai. I'm not exactly sure the brand. I think it was a Hyundai, but I don't know the actual model. But that scares me. A fuel leak, an oozing battery. I don't necessarily check my car. You should. When I was younger, every time I would pull out of a parking spot or the street, because I always had to park on the street because the apartment complex didn't really have parking. So when I would try to look and see if I saw any spots. That's what you just get trained to do that, where I'm pulling out, let me just check the ground in my rearview mirror, or as I'm pulling out, check to see if I see a leak. On asphalt, it's more difficult, especially when you park on the street. But many of us forget to do that. We just jump in our car and go. And if you have an electric vehicle that's oozing, that could be life or death. Now, thank God we don't have as many issues. Tesla does a pretty good job in terms of protecting the battery. But I'm looking at, and I understand this fuel recall has to do with fuel injectors, but the BMW recall had to do with their electric vehicles. I mean, how careful? What is our screening checklist? When you fly a plane, I took some flying lessons. You do a very thorough, long checklist to make sure everything's working properly and everything's right before you take it up in the air. Do we do that with our car? We should be doing a checklist with our car. They taught us that in driver's ed. Do you remember how we had to do a checklist? I want you to check your brake lights. I want you to check this before you enter the vehicle. And I'm like, but if I'm late for school, how do I do all that? I got to jump in the car and go. And we take our cars for granted. But the fact that the electric vehicle could ooze, that really frightens me. And my feeling on this is we went too quick, too much, too fast as it pertains to electric vehicles. Now, somebody could say, but Dr. Daliah, golf carts. We've been using golf carts and electric vehicles for years. In fact, old cars, some of the first cars in the early teens, 1900s, were electric. They tried that, where there was a battery, you plugged it in, and then the car would drive X amount of miles. It didn't work. It didn't have enough longevity, and the battery was too heavy for the car. So it was easier for them to use fuel. But we exploded in terms of our electric vehicle technology. And for some of our vehicles, I'm looking at some of these Teslas and Rivians, and wow, pretty impressive. But did we ensure that hitting a wall or a tree wasn't going to make us ignite? Now, the National Transportation Safety Board had done a review saying, look, most car fires are still fuel injected. Even if they look at the numbers, if they filter out the numbers per capita, it's still more of a risk with somebody with a full gas tank than an electric vehicle. But why are we hearing time and time again, a bunch of kids hit a tree and their car's on fire? Or you see these cars burnt to a pulp, and all they did was go over the side or the embankment. I'm just nervous about that, and I'm afraid we might not be told that what we're driving, I don't have an electric vehicle, but for those who do, that they might be at more risk. If it wasn't for me hearing of that case where that gentleman was coming off an on-ramp, was it an off-ramp of a freeway? Or he was on an on-ramp, and all of a sudden he noticed his car was on fire. He immediately jumped out, and his kid was not in the back seat, in the car seat, but he said the flames engulfed the car seat so quick that if he was driving his child that day, he would not have been able to get his child out. And there was no collision, no trauma to the car. It just ignited. Chevy Volt, I think, had to years ago be recalled because, again, just spontaneous ignition of a battery. So be aware, smell your car, check your battery, make sure nothing's oozing. And if you do have any sort of vehicle, be aware of the recalls. 1-877-DOC-DALIAH. Dr. Daliah here. Are you tired, burned out, gaining weight, succumbing to the daily pressures of life? Well, how's your dopamine doing? How you feel right now, how you'll feel an hour from now, and how you'll feel next week is completely reliant on your dopamine. Our daily motivation and willingness to push through challenges depends on the intricate chemical process dopamine provides. Christian Kalikas and I created Deploying Dopamine, a book that tells you what dopamine is, when it dysfunctions, and how to successfully deploy it when needed. Find Deploying Dopamine on Amazon today. Check it out.
Increase fuel economy up to 7.9% with Hot Shot's Secret Gasoline Extreme, the solution to maximize your engine's performance and fuel economy. Whether you're driving a sports car or a daily commuter, Gasoline Extreme is specially formulated with PEA to deep clean. Don't settle for an average driving experience. Upgrade to Hot Shot's Secret Gasoline Extreme and go further on each tank. Order now on Amazon or HotShotSecret.com. Hot Shot Secret, powered by...
Hey, America. How tired are you of mainstream corporate media's biased narratives and manipulated news? Their dishonesty and attempts to influence this generation have been exposed, put on display for anyone who's even half paying attention. But the New American Magazine has been an honest source of news and commentary for over 50 years. This is your opportunity to receive the stalwart of principled journalism at a deep discount. Picture a beautifully published magazine arriving at your doorstep twice a month, packed with insightful stories written with integrity. It's also available digitally on the New American's mobile app. Get up to speed with intelligent coverage from a freedom perspective. Right now, for a limited time, the New American is available to radio listeners at a 25% discount on a new subscription. Visit thenewamerican.com/radio25 and receive 25% off. Subscribe today at thenewamerican.com/radio25.
We We are back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-DOC-DALI, 1-877-DOC-DALI. Whenever I ask my husband if we should get a lottery ticket, he says, he actually is more for it than I am, but he says, we have a better chance of getting struck by lightning than winning the lottery. And I believe that lightning strikes are a lot more common than you think. In fact, 45 to 100 lightning bolts hit the Earth's surface each second. Each lightning bolt contains close to 1 billion volts of electricity. And summer months bring on the lightning season. Unfortunately, these could be very, very deadly. And we're being told that Olympic medalist Adun Gronvold has died at the age of 49 after being struck by lightning. Adun was an Olympic ski cross medalist, was struck by lightning. He was 49 years old, according to the Norwegian Ski Federation. He won bronze in the 2010 Vancouver Games. He was an alpine skier, I remember him, and a ski cross athlete. He was in a cabin, or he was on a cabin trip, they said. He was struck by lightning, quickly taken to the hospital, received treatments for his injuries, but then died later that evening. He was a member of the Norway's alpine skiing team before he moved into freestyle and ski cross. He had one podium finish as a World Cup alpine skier, finished third in downhill in Sierra Nevada, Spain in 1999. Also won a bronze for ski cross in 2005 World Championships and the overall ski cross cup in 2007. The lightning strike, it really frightens us when we see something like this, because to be at the wrong place at the wrong time, especially for something so remote, but apparently it's a lot more common than we think. According to the CDC, the summer months of June, July, and August see the highest number of lightning deaths. One data set I had from 2006 to 2021, CDC reported 444 people died in that 15-year time period. There's an average of 28 to 30 people who die every year from getting struck by lightning. So there's a phrase, when thunder roars, go indoors. I know in TED, they had another thunder song about getting a thunder buddy. That's not the phrase we remember. We remember when thunder roars, go indoors. Why? Because you are much more likely to get hit by lightning if you're standing outside. If you can't go indoors, try to get to an open area. A lot of people think I need to take cover from the lightning. Let's have something else taller than me take the hit. The problem is you don't want to be by a tree or by a structure that could get hit, because it could explode, crash down within seconds, or carry the voltage. If you're in a car and you're unable to get into a building, close all the doors and windows. Right? Try not to touch the metal part of your car. I know that's hard. Keep your arms inside. They say avoid golf carts, convertibles, or any other open vehicle. They say whether indoors or outdoors, avoid being near concrete, bodies of water, or electric wires or outlets. Now, let's say you see somebody hit by lightning. I know you're going to want to go over there and take a selfie, but don't. Call 911. Once you feel they're safe to approach using, maybe a metal, not a metal, like a wood stick. So I wouldn't recommend this. I would just recommend calling 911. But if that person is safe to touch, then we would begin CPR. I had posted a bunch of videos that of some of the damage that lightning could do. I caught a lightning strike. This was, I believe, back in 2021. It was July of 2021. And it was a cross of lightning where it came down and then it forked out. And so there's this picture. I have it on my Facebook and Twitter. I'll repost it, that I was able to catch of lightning. And it was just on my iPhone. And what you see, if you look at the size of the bolt, it covers a large surface area. And we think that it's going to be invisible. It's going to be, angstroms long. I would just understand and be humbled and respect the fact that these things could be pretty damn dangerous. 1-877-DOC-DALI, 1-877-DOC-DALI. So many people have questioned, if there is the return to work for being a government worker, what happens if you're religious? Well, according to the Office of Personnel Management, there are religious exceptions. I don't know much about religions preventing you from working on site. If you have to take off for a religious holiday, you're not working. In Judaism, there are days where you're supposed to be in temple and you're not supposed to work. And those are, but you take off. I can't think of something in my religion where you have to do your work in a remote area, because in my religion, if you're not supposed to be working, you're not supposed to be working. So it wouldn't necessarily mean working remote. But according to the Office of Personnel Management memo seen by Newsweek and being reported by Newsweek, federal workers, they say, can seek permission to work from home, adjust their hours, and seek other changes to their schedule for faith reasons. There are 2.4 million federal workers in the United States. It is the largest employer in the country, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And so Trump had wanted people to move back home, and many of the exemptions were looked at with a raised eyebrow. But if it has to do with religion, that there's a lot more flexibility. Now, there's still hiring freezes. There's still mass layoffs, although now the big, beautiful bill allows there to be a lot more funding for ICE agents and customs and immigration and border patrol. But for other individuals who are, working for a government job, if you do need a religious exemption, you definitely want to apply for that. But policies relating to religion, Trump, I guess, identifies as a non-denominational Christian, did establish a White House faith office aimed at eliminating what he describes as anti-Christian bias within the federal government. That's pretty cool. And so he, in a memo sent by the OPM director, he said government agencies should adopt a, quote, generous approach to approving religious accommodations, prioritizing employee needs while maintaining operational efficiency. So one thing that could possibly apply to something like this, is, let's say you keep kosher and you cannot cook your food in the teacher's lounge or the lounge or whatever where there's pork or non-kosher. So you need to do all your meal prep because you have medical issues at home. I mean, maybe there's that, but I can't speak for all Jews. But if we're not supposed to work on the Sabbath, if we need to take off early to prepare for a Jewish holiday, it's time off the clock. We don't get paid for that, but to allow us to, it's interesting. I always, because I'm not very religious, but I did take off for the high holy days. I would always cover people for Christmas, Sundays. I would always cover the days that people needed off. And it was interesting because my Christian friends say, I love working with Jews because they'll always cover Christmas for us, or they'll always cover. And that was I've worked every Christmas since I can remember, just to cover for other people. I've worked every Easter. So it'll be interesting to see, what accommodations are talking about. 1-877-DOC-DALI.
Looking for an easy read that can actually help secure someone's future? Pick up a copy of Mark Falter's book, Common Sense Income Strategies. For the past 30-plus years, Mark has helped thousands of hardworking Americans secure their financial future by using strategies that continue to create wealth, whether the market is up or down. Strategies that will make perfect sense once you take the time to read this powerful book. Common Sense Income Strategies brings to you what Mark has been teaching in person and talking about on the radio for decades. It's not rocket science, it's a pretty easy read. You've worked too long and too hard not to see the fruits of your labor. Common Sense Income Strategies is available now on Amazon or by calling 866-764-2635. That's 866-764-2635. Common Sense Income Strategies by Financial Fitness Show host Mark Falter. Secure your financial future today.